got a crazy-ass true story to tell. It could be funny, or thrilling, or creepy, as hell. And when you speak, surely none will make a sound. And the world's going breathless when your true story comes around.
Welcome back to Your Best True Story podcast. FCAT, you excited to be back?
Yeah, I heard you have some another batch for us today.
Yep, we have got 4 new stories, new call-ins, and as always, we're going to kind of dive into them, listen to them. The way this works is I've heard the calls, have picked them out, and are going to play them for Freddie. He has not heard the calls. So like with the audience, he'll be hearing it for the first time, and then we'll just kind of dive into discussing, whatever's interesting about the call. And one thing before we get going, I wanted to remind people, there's also the bonus of that you can vote for your favorite story from any month on the website, yourbesttruestory.com. Voting for January's stories is going to be open on February 1st and go for a week. And you just show up on the website, click whichever story you think is the best. And the idea with this is that person will actually win $250, which is good for them. But then we're also going to invite them to come on the show, have their own episode being interviewed to go more in depth into those stories. So ideally, if the audience is picking the most interesting story, something they want to hear more about, and that person agrees to come back on, we can get even further into it and find out more details about it. So did any of the stories, were you haunted by any of the stories from the last episode?
I have not yet been haunted by the stories, but I'm open.
Yeah, you're open for a haunting. Yeah. It does seem that most of the calls we're getting are paranormal based or kind of like spooky, which is great. Yeah. Those are awesome stories. But just to clarify for anybody out there, it doesn't have to be a spooky story. It could be a fun. We've actually got, which I put at the end, a definite non-paranormal story.
Yeah. I'm looking forward to some really, really good drunk stories.
Yeah. That would be ideal. Just even as it's occurring, just somebody to call up drunk and
no, not the call up drunk. That the guess what happened last night. You'll never believe this type story.
Yep. Those are good ones.
Like, you did what?
So let me see here if we can get the first story played. And Freddie, you're going to immediately recognize, because from last episode, Bob Sorrentino, the podcaster with the Italian Roots and Genealogy podcast, he's back.
Nice. All right.
Yeah, he actually isn't back. He had called in 2 different times originally, and I overlooked the first call. So now we're going to play his second call that's got more quick stories, kind of the same way the first time. He's got a lot of quick stories. So I'll kind of preface it once I listen to it a couple of times that all of the events he's talking about are all related to one house, the different sort of potentially haunting activities that occurred in it. And since I don't think he explains this, I'll also say that I think the person that he mentions, Rose, is who they purchased the house from, because he mentions the name Rose, but he doesn't really explain who it is. And you kind of need to think about that to get the proper context. But so Here we go. It is Bob Sorrentino, and we're going to have him tell us about his hauntings. Bob, take it away.
Rose's dad. In 1991, we moved into a new home not far from our first home. Unlike our first home, which we bought new from a builder, this home was about 30 years old. It was a very normal-looking split level and a place that you would not associate with paranormal activity. That changed the second night we were there. My wife's sister and her husband were spending the night, and about 2 a.m., we heard a loud banging. It sounded like someone was banging on the door or the walls. We all ran out into the hallway, and we were asking each other what happened. No one knew. It was very strange, but we all went back to sleep and forgot about the incident. Who turned off the light? Not long after that incident, I was leaving for work the day after Thanksgiving. My wife was out of town, and after I left home, I noticed that I had left the kitchen light on. I was running late, so I left it on. When I returned home, the light was off. I figured the bulb blew out. Then I checked the switch and saw that it was turned off, but not by me. Is one bedroom for the ghost. One weekend, my father-in-law visited us and stayed in a small bedroom in the front of the house. A couple of weeks after that, my wife came home after visiting him and relayed the following story. My father-in-law asked why we bought such a big house and was one of the rooms for the ghost. What ghost, my wife asked. The one in the bedroom. He went on to describe a short old man that was dressed in shorts and a baseball cap and was pacing in front of the window in his bedroom. The next day, I saw a next-door neighbor and asked her if Rose's father was short and if he wore shorts and a baseball cap. She turned whiter than a ghost and asked, "How did you know that?" I explained the story, and she asked what bedroom. When I told her the bedroom at the top of the stairs in the front, she explained that that was Rose's sewing room and that her father would pace back and forth waiting for Rose to return from work. The wood pile. In the winter, I would pile up wood in the garage for the fireplace. I would stack it up nice and neat. One night, I heard noises from the garage, like wood being moved around. The next morning, I found that the wood didn't just fall from the pile, but it was scattered around the garage. The Froebel Star. Rose was born in the Black Forest in Germany. One year, I redid the insulation and floor in the attic and cleared everything out. I moved everything away from the center, and so there was a wide open space. A few weeks later, I found the German origami Froebel Star dead in the center of the attic. It was never there before, and could not have just dropped from somewhere. It was placed there. I recognized the star as being from Germany because as a boy in the Cub Scouts, my dead mother was from Germany, and one year we made these stars at Christmas. After a few years, everything stopped. We then learned that Rose's mom had passed away. Our conclusion was that possibly Rose's dad was waiting for his wife. We never felt threatened, but there were a couple of attic rooms where Rose's parents lived that always seemed a bit eerie.
So you get all that? His rapid fire those stories?
Yeah. The light turning off in the kitchen. The origami. Is it origami?
I think origami, and I don't know if what he was referring to, he says star, if that was like a Jewish star, like, I don't know.
Yeah, I'm picturing kind of like a star on top of a Christmas tree, but made out of paper.
Yeah, that could be it.
So he set up the wood along the sides of the wall this is in the garage?
I thought next to the garage.
Next to the garage.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. And then...
But maybe in the garage. Yeah.
Did any of the wood move, or there was just a piece of paper in the middle?
No, I think those were two separate events. There was one that a lot of the wood was moved, and this is all the same house. I had to listen to it a couple of times to kind of visualize it because it goes so quick.
Yeah.
But so they moved into the house. They immediately heard banging.
Yeah, the banging. During the night.
And then his
the ball
father-in-law
in the window.
Yep, saw something.
The short man with the ball cap pacing back and forth in the window.
Yeah.
And then they talked to Rose, who they bought the house from, and asked if her father was short and wore a ball cap.
Yeah.
And then he pointed out the room where he had seen the apparition, and she turned white because that was his room.
Yeah. And then he had the light that turned off somehow.
The switch.
Yeah.
The light switch.
And then the wood pile moved a lot of the wood, and then he found the origami star.
Because he said he had set the wood up along the edges, so I was trying to, maybe I just missed that detail, where he set it up and then there was wood, and then there was a origami star in the middle.
Yeah, I thought those were two different things.
Oh,
it was that the wood got knocked around, and then I don't know, maybe I misheard that. But either way, it seems like I'm always quick to. I'm not a big believer, like we talked about last time, in electrical things being, because I just my distrust of technology is so rampant that even if it is doing something very weird, I don't attribute that to ghost
Yeah, like
paranormal.
what if it was one of those light switches where you have a two light switch set where if one's on
Yeah.
and you flip the other one off, then the next position for that first one would be
Yeah.
off in the same on.
Or couldn't you just
position.
have whatever that switch is just get worn down enough where it just like drops or something?
Yeah.
I mean,
And then there's a memory factor. Like
Yeah.
for sure, you remember that the light was, I guess he's saying because he was late and then he noticed it was on, but he didn't have time to turn it off. But I my days mushed together. So
Yeah. The most interesting thing I think is anything. I was just going to ask flat out, what's your stance on ghosts? Have you ever had your own ghost experience?
yeah, but for me, it's like, I guess this is weird, but like I'll wake up in the middle of the night and I'll see stuff all the time. Like,
Really?
yeah, all the time. Like crazy.
Why are we listening to other people?
We go in that caller, so we listen to the caller.
What are you seeing?
No, but and here's the thing, Jim. Like I've experienced it so many times that I'm just like, okay. Like the other night it was like you wake up and then your brain starts doing things. It's like it'll take a shadow on the wall, or it'll take a reflection, and then your brain will start creating.
Yeah.
And you'll be awake at this point, at least for me. I'll be awake and I'll be looking and I'm like, yep, that is for like a squirrel. A squirrel is in the house. I could see it and I could see it moving around. And
just so I can picture this is like a giant black squirrel.
well, like not like a 6-foot squirrel,
Damn it.
like an actual squirrel-sized squirrel. But your brain just starts going and it's running through what it's trying to match, and it starts from a place of haziness, and you're not fully there. But I'll wake up to this stuff all the time. I'm like, oh yeah, there's a cat in the fan. What? Why? But I don't think why, because I'm too kind of dazed to understand why. But then I'll be awake, and then I'm still staring at it. I'm like, yeah, that's definitely a cat. So for the first couple of years, I would like literally try and train my eyes on what it was I was seeing, and then try and move myself to where I knew a light source was so I could catch it, so like, and I would literally get to the light, turn on, nothing.
Yeah.
Nothing's there.
So you've been doing this since you were a kid?
Yeah. That and sleepwalking.
Yeah. I used to sleepwalk.
Yeah.
Pretty bad.
What the hell? Like, what is even going on with that?
Well, okay, so here's like I've never had actually an experience of waking up and seeing something.
Yeah.
So but like since everybody's brain is wired differently, it's so my weirdest thing when I've woken up like that, and it's weird. It hasn't happened in a long time, but it was weird as shit when it happened. And it seemed to reoccur for a couple of years. It was almost, and I get kind of chills thinking about it. It was almost like, so I wake up from a dead sleep and I'm conscious of everything, but my memory is so wiped. Like literally I'm awake, so awake I could stand up out of my bed, but literally I can't remember anything, like who I am, where I am, and I'm aware that I can't remember.
Yeah.
And it is like a surreal, it's so panic inducing, but then at the same time, you can't even really panic because you don't know what you're panicking about. Like, it's just because there's nothing, it's just bizarre. It's almost like an ego death thing, I think.
Yeah.
Where
you're rebooting.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a good way to describe it. Rebooting. I've had that. It hasn't happened in a long time. I had it happen several times. And then probably it seems like a long time until that kicks in, like memories.
Yeah.
But then, it's probably only 10 or 15 seconds or something.
Yeah.
I would be standing there, but it seems like it takes forever.
Yeah.
And then when it starts to come in, it's sort of like you get one memory and then it all floods because then your brain can use that piece and go, oh yeah, my name's Jim. And I'm in this apartment or house. But it, like, in the deepest part of that state, like, if you were able to ask me anything, like, are you a human? I wouldn't have been able to answer.
Yeah.
Like, I had no context for anything. Like, it was the most bizarre kind of mental state to be in.
I can understand that. I've had some, this isn't the same, but I've had similar waking ups, but it was a kegger induced mornings. You know, you wake up and you're like,
mine was always sober, not.
You know, you're just so peaceful, and then you stretch out, and you're like and then you raise your arms, and you crack your eyes open, and you're like and you're like,
why cover?
No, you're like,
beer cans. And,
where am I?
Yeah,
I'm like, who am I? I'm like, whoa, what? Where? I don't know. I don't even know this.
Yeah, it's like the drunk, amnesia, but worse somehow.
Yeah,
because you're more. You don't.
Oh no, yeah.
And when you've got that drunk hang up, like, you, at least there's some sense of you that you know, like.
You're waiting for the see, for me, I'm waiting for the rush of the memories, and then so I initially would go, all right, where is my phone and where's my money? You know, where's my wallet? You know, and you reach in and you're like, if you don't have those in your pocket, you're like, what I do.
Start small.
What? But I've woken up, not to get away from the drunk thing, but I've woken up with the sleep paralysis before, where you wake up.
I don't think I've ever had that. That sounds horrifying.
Yeah, it sucks.
Yeah.
It's like you're scared, but you can't move.
Yeah.
And
my memory thing seems sort of like sleep paralysis, but it's in my brain rather than body.
Yeah. It's just weird. This whole, like, where did we go? Are we sleeping? Like, what's happening? And then why am I walking around the apartment?
Yeah. The closest thing I've had to waking up, like, with some sort of ghost experience, is I've had the sensation, or not sensation, but heard my name called very loud.
Yeah.
That's woken me up when no one else was there.
Yeah.
And it was definitely seemed audibly like not in my brain, but coming from somewhere else. And then I have one time, and I still remember this because it was so damn creepy. I was in that state where I was sort of just going into sleep.
Mm-hmm.
And I felt in my back, I was laying on my side. It was a bony finger that somehow pushed into my back. And then it, like, jerked me out of my falling asleep. I was like, what the fuck? I was alone. And then I spun around, literally expecting somebody to be there, and nobody was freaking there. And that was incredibly weird. But I always go back to, with the ghost thing, the hardest part of, like, I believe in something spiritually, believe for quote unquote God, not to get into technicals of what type of God or any of that, but I believe in that. And I can't see where ghosts fit into that picture.
Wow, I can tell you.
Ghost would exist.
I can tell you.
All right.
It's all right. So just take our spectrum that we can see.
Yeah.
Like, we have a very tiny spectrum of light that we can actually perceive.
Yeah.
Compared to even animals that are on the same planet in the same time dimension as us, they can see things that we cannot see.
Yeah.
In the room, or they're aware of things that we are not aware of.
I think that's what happened to Maria's cat.
Yeah.
Last episode.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. But so that's where I would stick the ghosts. They're just where.
But why? Like, why would, because I guess what I'm asking is, like, every time there's a ghost story, it's something like what Bob was describing of the guy seen up there in the window pacing.
Yeah.
Or something. Like, what is,
okay,
so the soul can't move on?
Well, no, let's back up. That is, to me, feels like we're just trying to make it human. So I don't assume that it's human. Like, imagine like a coral reef where everything is just existing and interacting. And then now cut down half of the inhabitants of the coral reef. Like those are the ones that me and you live with. Like,
Yeah.
but all the other ones are inhabiting and doing their thing like right next to us, but we just can't perceive them.
Yeah.
So what if they just exist with us?
Now, see, that's interesting because that does go more with the Kabbalah in Judaism, I'm pretty sure, as well as Islam. Both lean very heavily towards, I don't believe they actually believe in ghosts, but they believe in jinn, which is different. The closest thing in Christianity is demons to jinn. But jinn, when you actually go back and look in the history, the Jewish history and Muslim, jinn they're actually like what you're describing, a separate species, almost a separate entity from humans that they're not all negative. They run the spectrum the same as humans. You can get jinn that are evil to jinn that are helpful, everywhere in between, but they're doing their own thing in their own dimension. And then lots of times what people attribute in the more westernized world to ghosts, apparently, if I understand correctly, are the jinn that they will pick up, and sort of maybe dovetails with what you're saying, that we're trying to make sense of it. We give it attributes and say like, oh, we
humanize it.
Yeah, that was Rose's dead.
Give it emotions and a backstory and, a purpose and, and so maybe you do have some abilities to see some things that animals see or, past that, whatever. And you can flutter in and out of those things, when you're just coming out of your sleep state, maybe you have, the ability to perceive something that you don't when you're fully conscious or fully awake. And that's what you're seeing. And that's what I'm seeing. Man, I'm seeing some DMT elves hopping around on my furniture, which I'm just chalking up to that. My brain's seeing cartoons, but maybe a lot of people have seen DMT elves apparently when they go on those trips. So,
that's what, before as an adult, before I ever used psychedelics, which I've primarily used mushrooms, before I ever did that, or once I did that, I realized when I was a kid, very young kid, probably 5 or 6, I think I had the ability with my imagination and just the state of my brain to trip for fun. When I went, because I would remember, and I never described it as tripping until I actually tripped as an adult. And I was like, wow, I'm seeing the same patterns that I did when I was 5 or 6. I would just sort of zone out and could stare at something long enough that it would start to do these weird geometric shapes and go into this. And it's pretty crazy. That could be what you're doing. Tripping is you're bringing your brain, back to some more, open state that maybe as a kid we all have.
Yeah, my 4-year-old had a friend named Ghost. All right, cool. He talked about him. Yeah.
What did he say he did?
He's just there. Where is he? He's over there, sitting in the chair. Okay, that's cool. Where is he? A man, woman now? Neither of those. Okay,
interesting. Yeah, I love the whole. I want to get learn more about. There's, I think, what is his name? There's a doctor at the University of Virginia that's done a lot of studies on reincarnation around the world. And it's fascinating to hear some of kids' stories about remembering their past lives, because kind of the same thing is there's a certain age you get where probably around the same time you stop being able to see ghosts, stop being able to make yourself trip at will and talk to DMT elves. Yeah. Then you also phase out forgetting, you start to forget your past lives, and as you become more ingrained in this one. And that guy's, some of his research is amazing, because it's what they would get kids and they would interview them. Those kids would have stories about being reincarnated and about their past lives. Then they would independently go and check those stories out. And a huge number of them check out where there's no way the kid could know that in the past life they're describing that person had, like, 3 sisters and lived on this street and that kind of thing.
Yeah.
But it would check out.
What about some of the crazy abilities they have sometimes, or they know French, like full-on French?
Yeah.
Or can play the piano like at a Mozart level.
Yeah.
And have never been taught.
That's what, I would think that has to be, because I'm kind of a believer in reincarnation also. I would think that would have to be people that have that, like, somehow, like, the reset from that last life to this life didn't completely take away that skill at playing the piano, or so they're starting point of much greater ability, basically.
We're thinking on a linear timeline where there's versions of this where all things happen at once. Yeah. So they're just tapping into the other version of them on the other, frequency or whatever, where they know all that, and you basically know everything anyway.
It always gives me a headache when I try to imagine getting away from the linear.
Yeah, so you're not really learning things from books since you're just tapping. You know it anyway. Yeah. You just think you need to learn a book, read a book to learn something.
Yeah. All right, well, let's switch gears now a little bit. Still in the paranormal vein. We are now, Freddie, going to hear from Robin. She is calling in about something that happened years ago in Massachusetts. I'm calling the story Aunt Shirley.
Cool.
And this does get into more along the lines of what we've just been talking about, of what can you believe, what's reality, what's not. And Robin, take it away.
Hi, my name's Robin, and I want to tell a story from a time period that was very traumatic for me and my mother. She had recently gotten divorced again and was in very bad financial shape, so we were having to rely on friends and family and relatives to give us places to stay. One of the people that we ended up briefly staying with was a woman named Aunt Shirley. She wasn't actually a blood relative, and I found out later on. She was just someone that my mother knew. We drove to Brockton, Massachusetts with the plan of staying at Aunt Shirley's for the entire summer. Something happened that'll fairly quickly where we only ended up staying a little bit over a week, and she never brought up Aunt Shirley again once we left her property. I had a recurring nightmare that went on for about 2 decades. I would have this very intense nightmare that would reoccur every few months, and at least that's what I thought it was, although recently some things have happened where I'm starting to question if it was a nightmare at all. But I do remember the house itself was kind of spooky. It was a big colonial house. Many floors, but it had kind of fallen into disrepair. It was overgrown with weeds and vines and spider webs, that kind of thing. And when you were inside it, it was very drafty and noises. So if for a 6-year-old girl, it was very spooky. And that's what I always assumed made me have the recurring nightmare. And the recurring nightmare was that I would be in a bedroom at the top of this old dilapidated colonial house, and I would be woken up by hearing people chanting down below. And so I would wake up in the middle of the night hearing this chanting, not know what it was, and be fairly frightened and want to find my mother. So I walk out in the hallway and I'm looking for my mom. The chanting grows louder once I'm out in the hallway, so I go down the stairs to the first floor as the chanting grows even louder. No one is ever down on the first floor, but I see a basement door open, and I head to it as the chanting grows. Once I'm at the top of the basement stairs, all I can see at the bottom is flickering candle and torchlight. And as I go down the creaking basement steps, the chanting is growing louder and louder until I get to the bottom step and step onto the basement floor, when the chanting stops and I see there are a bunch of adults in black robes around a table. They all turn and look at me with these incredibly creepy smiles on their faces like they're expecting me, and behind them on the table there is something tied down, wiggling, squirming. But that's always the point that I wake up in a cold sweat, very scared. So it was only a couple of years ago when my mother was in the final stages of cancer and I was staying with her, helping her out, that I started to wonder if it wasn't a nightmare at all. So I was helping my mother with a lot of clerical cleaning stuff, trying to make day-to-day things easier for her. And one of the things I would do for her when she wasn't feeling well, as I would sit on the edge of the bed and read letters to her from well-wishers and friends and things. A letter came in that on the envelope it said Shirley, and I won't read her last name out, but said from Brockton, Massachusetts. And once I said her name, my mother immediately grabbed the letter and, without opening it, tore it up and threw it in the garbage. I rarely have ever seen my mother act like that, and I asked her if that was Aunt Shirley, and she said, yes, it was. I asked her what the problem was, and she would not tell me. She just said that Aunt Shirley was into very dark things. That's why we had to leave. And if Shirley ever reached out to me, that I had to promise my mother that I would never respond or read anything that Shirley has sent me. And I agreed to it. And once my mother passed away, I did receive a letter from that woman about 2 weeks after my mother passed away, but I honored my mother's request and tore the letter up and threw it in the garbage. It kind of freaks me out because I no longer think that recurring nightmare was maybe actually a nightmare. It might have been some sort of memory or something, but anyway, I'm just glad to stay away from that woman, and that's my story, and thank you very much.
So, Freddie, do you think she was in a cult?
Uh, the
I looked up Brockton, Massachusetts,
yeah.
and trying to find if that was a big occult hotspot.
Mm-hmm.
And it didn't. Well, what I found was voodoo.
Mm-hmm.
It is weird that it's got actually a pretty heavy number of stories about people being arrested over the years for voodoo rituals, and a woman that, let me see if I can pull this up. It was Brockton mother gets life in prison for stabbing 2 young sons to death in voodoo ritual in 2018. And there's like several of those that it seems like an above average amount of people being arrested for voodoo.
Yeah, the story gives kind of Eyes Wide Shut vibes, where you have these secret society or, the group. So who knows if she was actually having a dream? I mean, that young, you can, if you're traumatized in some way, your brain might switch things around so that you remember them as a dream, even though they might have happened to you, or you split personalities and it happened to somebody else.
Yeah.
Your second personality remembers it as a dream.
Yeah.
Just to experience it in a way that lets you go on and cope.
I had that actually reminded me of that there was a dream that I had, I know as a dream from when I was a kid, but for years it seemed like a memory. Like it was so bizarre to me that like when I was home and it had to deal with the house I grew up in, there was, and basically like I'd say it first as like I had a memory, but I'm sure it had to have been a dream, but I have a memory of being able to pull back a panel in my closet and crawl into a tunnel in my closet and go in this tunnel that took me all up and down because we lived in a 2-story house.
Yeah.
That took me behind the walls and up and down all through the house wherever I wanted to go.
Yep.
And I know that tunnel absolutely does not exist.
Not,
But the weird thing was it was such a prevalent in the memory section of my brain rather than a dream thing.
yeah.
That like a couple of times when I would be back from like college and once I'd moved away, it made me, I actually went to the closet
Yeah.
and just double checked a couple of times because I was like, how does this seem so real?
It probably was from one of your other lives.
Yeah. Living in that same house and there was a tunnel?
I mean, does it, because you're not going to, do you specifically remember that the layout would match up with that house or would?
Sort of.
Okay,
It was like, I mean, realistic, like if you know the plans of the house, it does not. But yeah, when I was younger, it would have made sense because it was, the tunnel led to parts of the house that I knew.
Yeah.
Like it made sense that's partly also why, like, I know it had to have been a dream because it doesn't really make sense if you know the architecture of the house.
Yeah. So, I mean, I don't know, maybe when you maybe it's just tapping into something that you remember and then the times in your dream that you get out of that tunnel, it's a part of the house that you're living in now.
Yeah.
But the remembrance of, crawling through the walls, maybe that happened to you in a version of your past where you did have to, do you remember why you were crawling through?
I just thought it was cool.
Oh,
Yeah.
so it wasn't like an escaping thing.
It was more an exploration kind of. It wasn't negative. It was like kind of exciting and.
What if you didn't physically crawl through the walls, but you mentally
astral
projected behind the walls and explored your house?
I wish I could still do that.
Yeah, there's books on how to do that.
Yeah, that would be amazing. So, what do you think with Robin? Do you think she was?
I would have been interested to see what the letters are saying.
Yeah.
That's just my curiosity, and cat getting killed thing. But, I don't know if I could have not opened the letter. The second one, the first one, she didn't have an opportunity, but the second one, but then what if it's, filled with juju?
Yeah. What if immediately possessed?
What if it's like one of those glitter bombs, but not glitter?
Demonic.
It's voodoo juju.
Yeah. I think that's okay. It should.
Like a bunch of chicken claws and ground down bones like in your face.
What this made me think of, especially once I did start to research Brockton, Massachusetts and see so many weird voodoo stories, which I always like to try and point out that I think, all right, so there's Santeria and there's voodoo, I think is the way I understand it. Santeria is actually, there's a lot of people that practice Santeria, that it's like a legit religion, isn't all about the darkness, has a lot. I actually met one time with a Santerian priest.
Oh, cool.
And had so it's like a legitimate, like they're trying to do good.
Are they like kind of like witches where they just operate in nature and that type of thing?
Somewhat, yeah, because I can't remember exactly. Both of them, I think, stem from, slave trade from Africa, blending those religions, blending then with Western and even maybe Native American influences. But but Santeria, I know it's very similar to, not similar, but it's definitely got Catholicism influences because they have lots of sort of the same way that Catholics have saints. They have all these deities called orishas, I think. And it was pretty interesting when I went to go meet with the priest. They do a reading that is like sort of like not fortune telling, but they use connect with the divine to basically kind of analyze your particular individual situation in order to be able to offer you guidance.
Okay.
And the interesting thing was it's hard to describe that they use these, I think it was like stones that they cast, and he was saying his prayers the entire time he was analyzing me. But it was interesting because he actually did pinpoint a couple of medical things that were going wrong at the time.
Okay. Yeah.
Without me telling him, which was pretty fascinating. And then
it kind of reminds me of I don't know what you call them, where they do energy healings and sort of the new age version.
It's like that, but definitely seems way more structured. Like there's way more substance to it than just sort of new, some of the new agey stuff.
Yeah.
But that's the only reason why I went on that tangent is because I like to point out that then sometimes I think those people that don't know much about it, think they're like doing evil voodoo stuff, and they're really not. It's just like its own religion. Yeah. But there's some overlap, because I think my understanding, I could be wrong on this, but then voodoo is sort of the dark path of Santeria. Like it's people branching off that do want to use it for negative stuff. And
what if it's all energy manipulation at its base?
Oh yeah.
And all these versions of it.
Yeah. All
depending on which song you're chanting, but the base thing is that you're connecting and manipulating energy.
Yeah. Yeah. Definitely. Since we're all energy on some level.
Yep. Apparently. I guess.
I guess.
So I'm told.
When I was looking into that though, it reminded me. And I think I asked you to watch it back when it came out. Do you remember the Son of Sam Netflix documentary?
Yeah.
Where that journalist, Maury Terry, put together, and I've heard people, try to poke holes in his theory quite a bit, but his whole theory was that there was like a massive satanic cult that was led to the Son of Sam killings, but I think was even way bigger than that.
Yeah.
But then the interesting thing was, what made me remember that or think about it was, and I think this has been since that Netflix documentary came out, that was an awesome documentary.
So many coincidences.
Yeah, that guy makes a great case that what's his name, Berkowitz, was at least not the only killer, which like with Martin Luther King, JFK, Bobby Kennedy, it turns out there's so much evidence. I don't know that it was a satanic cult, but there's so much evidence that what's his name, Berkowitz, did not actually kill all the people.
Yeah.
Shoot them. And this is from a New York story in the New York Post that I found when I was just looking up stuff on Brockton, Massachusetts. There's a guy named Carl De Niro who was one of the people shot in the back of the head that lived by Son of Sam. And he has come out, and this is at least from 2021, this article, and it's about a book he came out with that says he is certain his shooter was not the Son of Sam, David Berkowitz, but a mysterious occult priestess named Big Breasted Wendy. And I'm not making this up.
That's a good name.
How bad I want to read his book now.
Named Big Breasted Wendy. What, on social media? Like, where's it? Is there a name tag with that name?
Yeah. I don't know. De Niro admits he never saw the shooter. His assertions of a trigger woman echo those of the late journalist Maury Terry, who investigated the Son of Sam case and was convinced Berkowitz was a cog in a satanic cabal that stretched across the U.S. Terry, who died in 2015, wrote The Ultimate Evil, an investigation of America's most dangerous satanic cult. I'm trying to look through to see if I can find real quick how he determined it was big-breasted.
Yeah, it's that name just sort of pops out at me as like, but where is it listed? Where would you write that?
Yeah.
Like, where would you refer to it?
That sounds like it really got deep into the cult, or somehow, yeah.
Like, because you'd have to either be like around a bunch of people where you would ask for big-breasted Wendy. You would maybe be a brothel or something.
Yeah.
Or what is it, like an office building where you walk in and on the front, the first floor by the elevators, it's, 103 is, Costco corporate, and 104 is big-breasted Wendy.
Yeah, maybe. Or maybe Carl De Niro is just walking down the street in Boston. Somebody walks up and goes, hey, you're the guy big-breasted Wendy shot.
Yeah. And that really perplexes me. That name just throws a whole nother angle onto that story. Like, why?
I am definitely going to have to get more details, research his book. That is
maybe he was padding his book with, sex cell.
That could be it. Or that could just be an AI compilation.
Yeah.
Like ChatGPT just decided to write a story about Son of Sam and add in big-breasted Wendy. He seems very serious in the book.
I know. That's what I'm saying. It's so out of place. Like, I'm just so curious how it came up.
Oh man. Well, that is something we will not get answered today.
Yeah.
Big-breasted Wendy is, but I'm going to look into that. All right. So we have got a satanic cult potentially in Brockton, Massachusetts.
Okay.
And now moving on. Our next call is coming from, he didn't give his name, so anonymous, from Orlando. And I titled this Uber Angel.
Ooh, all right.
Hi there. I'm calling in because my wife thinks this would make a great story, but I'm not so sure. I was returning home to Florida from a business trip to Las Vegas. I flew into Orlando, like always, and I didn't have phone service on the plane. And so right when I landed, I got a message from my wife that my brother had died in a car accident only a couple hours before. This was 2 years ago. Anyway, my brother and I were real close up until a few years ago, maybe 2 years before he passed. There wasn't a falling out of anything. We just hadn't talked in almost 2 years. Usual Christmas card stuff, We both lived in different states and had our own families, and our kids were busy with school. That's what I told myself when I thought about it. And the news, I think it hit me hard, but I couldn't feel anything right away, right when I got the message. I sat down on the taxi pickup curb at the airport, and maybe for an hour, I don't know, but I couldn't cry. I just felt blank, I guess, kind of numb, as I couldn't really remember it. I just blanked out for a while. So eventually I ordered my Uber, and this young guy named Gil picks me up. He could probably tell something was up because he didn't say anything right away other than hello, which isn't too strange with an Uber. Sometimes they're quiet, sometimes they like to talk to you. But he kept sneaking glances in the rearview mirror, so I kind of thought he could tell. And he finally asked me what's wrong. And I say my brother died, just like that. It didn't occur to me to shrug off his question or change the subject. It was almost like I felt compelled to answer. And for some reason. And then I add we hadn't spoken in 2 years, my brother and I. Gil was silent again for a while as he's driving. We're getting close to my house, and he says, "No one understands the love between brothers. Even if he didn't talk for 2 years, that love was always in his heart." And then he was silent for just another second, and then he said, "Believe me." And that's when I lost it. I couldn't even speak for the rest of the ride because I was crying so hard. It kind of unlocked something inside me, I guess. And a few days later, and after the worst of it was over, I decided I want to contact Gil and thank him, for his kind words. Yeah, I thought about them a lot during my grief. And somehow, like I said, he unlocked something, and it gave me a lot of comfort. After I was scared I wouldn't feel anything, what I was supposed to be feeling after I got the news. I had taken screenshots of his Uber profile like I always do. And I had the records in my email, but when I went to find them, they weren't there. I know I didn't delete them, but they weren't anywhere on my phone. So I called up the company to see if I could contact him or whatever, send him an email. And they said they had no record of a Gil who drove for them in that area, Central Florida. So I thought, okay, all right, that's a little weird. But I thought maybe he's using a pseudonym, but that doesn't explain why the receipts wouldn't go through. Maybe he didn't want to use his real name or something. But I should still have some record of it. So I ran my question all the way up the corporate ladder, sending emails to everybody who would write back looking for other drivers with that name. But they kept telling me the same thing. They couldn't find him, and I couldn't find him anywhere in the app. I couldn't order a ride from him. And even in the phone book, there's no listing for him around Orlando. The nearest Gil lives in Fort Lauderdale, and it's not the same guy. And so I probably would have forgotten about the missing screenshots and everything like that. Also, no money had been taken out of my account, even though the app said it charged me on the day that I ordered the ride. But all that's strange. But the weirdest thing that I just can't square. I can write up the other stuff to a glitch, maybe, or a guy that doesn't want his real name out there, but he didn't get paid. All that stuff is weird. But the weirdest thing is that when Gil dropped me off at my house, after I walk inside, my wife asked me how I got home before she was really looking at me and could tell that I'd been crying. And I told her I got an Uber, like always. And she said she saw me walking down the street in the dark, under the streetlights, and that I wasn't in a car. I was walking with my suitcase. So did I go crazy there for a while? I didn't know what to say to her, obviously, because I took a car ride. Maybe he dropped me off down the road and I blanked out again, like after I got the text message. Even if it was a hallucination, it would have been a 2-hour walk from the airport. And the timeline doesn't match with the messages that I got from my wife on my phone when she started to check on me. And so I don't know. I don't know what to think. Maybe you guys do. I guess if anyone near Orlando has gotten a ride from Gil, I'd love to hear about it. Thank you.
So yeah, the beeps were me, and sorry, those were a little loud. I was trying to make sure that the guy's last name was not given out.
Yeah.
Yeah. Hopefully this will be adjusted before it airs. I just almost broke mine and Freddie's eardrums.
Like
trying to
little prod.
Yeah, that was painful. So yeah, if your ears still work. Yeah, that was
Before we get into the story, I just gotta say, it sounds horrible, but every time I hear a beep, I assume there's a bad word. So Gil's name is like
Gil fucking.
Yeah, Gil fucker.
Yeah, Gil fucker.
Sorry.
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh, we have just completely taken out the beautiful.
That was such a nice story.
Yeah.
And I just went there. I couldn't help it.
I have got to tone that thing back. Good God, I think I'm bleeding out of one ear now. But yeah, that was a pretty interesting story.
Yeah.
And I love those when you can't figure out a logical answer to it.
Yeah. It's kind of like what he's describing is sort of like, you get off of work and then you start driving and then the next thing is you're home, but you don't remember, you just had a 45-minute drive and you just literally, you kept the car on the road, you stayed in your lane, you braked when you needed to brake, but it's just all this, it's like missing time.
Yeah.
So,
which is actually, I think, fairly common too from extreme trauma, even emotional. Like if you just found out your brother died, you could easily kind of go into a dissociative, I think they call it fugue state.
Yeah. There's.
But it's weird that he couldn't find that guy, Gil fucking.
That's, yeah. especially with a name like that. I mean, he's
You would think he would be easy to locate, and he's probably hanging out with big-breasted Wendy.
that's the only possibility. But yeah, anybody in Orlando would know Gil Fucker.
Yeah. When he was searching, like, there's just 48 Gil Fuckers, Orlando, and he couldn't. It's like, oh, this is just too many.
But yeah, he could. I mean, the memory part on is pretty explainable. The digital trail,
Yeah.
and then to have a trail from your wife, but not from the Uber is interesting too. Like that's, yeah. I mean, classic wormhole. I would think.
Have you ever heard of? Well, I'm sure you've heard of the missing 411 cases.
No, wait, 411.
Yeah, you've never heard of missing 411.
I know 811 is when you dig holes.
Now it's well, I don't know what the
911 is when you got a fire.
I think 411 is stands for information. So it's supposed to be missing information.
Wait, I can call a number and get
I
information.
don't know if that's still. I think that it used
Like,
to be.
so I could like, hey, what is the capital of Saskatchewan?
What if that would have told us everything correctly that we were supposed to do with our lives, and we just never needed to call 411? Everybody else. Everybody else has been using it, dialing forward. Should I marry that person? Should I take that job? Or when they give them the right information?
What is the 1040X form on my taxes?
Yeah.
And they tell you? Like, wow.
I don't know. I've never tried all. Maybe that's what it is. But, well, if you haven't heard the actual stories of missing 411,
Okay.
they're awesome.
Oh,
There's too many. There's a guy named David.
so that's a podcast?
No, it's a guy, a David Pulaski or something like that, that he's a former cop. And I'll try to summarize it best I remember. He's a former cop that probably, I want to say back like between 5-10 years ago, he was contacted by rangers, forest rangers in one of our national parks that said, because he was working as a private investigator, I think, once he had retired as a cop, but was well known in certain circles. They reached out to him and said, hey, man, you should really look into this. There's way more people going missing in national parks than anyone admits. And we are purposely supposed to suppress this information.
Mm-hmm.
And so that got him on the trail. He started researching all these missing person events that had occurred in national parks and trying to put together a case profile for them, like similar attributes of all of them, to see if he could sort of profile what was happening. And it turns out, first of all, it's way more than you would think. It's like, thousands, I think, that over the decades go missing in national parks.
Yeah.
And they all seem unrelated until he starts to plot out all these similarities in them. And it's stuff like that the people will be with other people. They'll be like within eyesight for, all except for like a couple of minutes.
Yeah.
And they'll just immediately disappear and nobody can ever find a trace of them again.
Yeah.
And even when they bring in like dog teams and search like all over the area again and again, they won't find any trace of the person, except in a lot of them. Then if the person has been killed or dies, they'll show back up weeks later in an already searched area.
Yeah.
That they've already searched multiple times. Like then 3 weeks later, the body will show up.
Well, that's because that's where the Stargates are.
Yeah. Well, that is my theory. Where I was going with all this is some of them are extremely well documented too. And there was a guy that, according to, I think this is the right story, it's basically they chalk it up to a dissociative fugue state that the guy went into. And I think it's the Stephen Kabaki story, is a guy that was like 1978, went missing in February of 1978 while in the state of Michigan. Kabaki's skis and ski pole were found abandoned upon the snow and ice, and his tracks were said to have just suddenly stopped, as if he walked out of reality with his backpack flung to the ground nearby. Since the location where he had vanished was so close to Lake Michigan, it was assumed that he had somehow fallen into the lake and drowned. Despite numerous searches, no one had any clue of where he could have gone, and he seemed to just have stepped off the face of the earth until 15 months later when he strolled right up to his father's house. When Kubaki was asked about what had happened to him or where he had been the whole time, his account didn't seem to make much sense. He said that he had suddenly woken up in a field 40 miles from his father's house, and that he was wearing clothes that were not his own, along with a small, unfamiliar bag laying next to him containing maps, none of which were his. And other than that, he had no recollection of the previous 15 months, and said when he came back into consciousness, it just felt like he had been on a long run.
Yeah.
He was very exhausted. So
That's
something like that maybe happened to the guy in the Uber, but not that dramatic, of course. But like the whole dissociative state is pretty fascinating. If it's because there's all kinds of with the missing 411, I think there's a few stories like that where they just are kind of nobody remembers. There's stories with a little girl, I think, that went missing in one of the parks and was missing in below freezing temperatures or something for, I want to say, like 4 days.
Mm-hmm.
They searched everywhere for her, couldn't find her. She shouldn't have been able to survive. She was like 5 or 6 by herself out in the woods in below freezing temperatures. Then they find her clinging to a tree in like a lake.
Yeah.
The middle of a lake where she couldn't have gotten to on her own. They rescue her, and she just says she can't remember anything except something to do with like bears taking care of her. And it's like, how did she survive for that long? How did the bears get around to the tree on the lake?
The bears might not have been bears. They probably, and I'm going to say this is probably 95% correct, they were inner earth people.
I'm bleeding inner earth also.
Yeah. So I just came across a cloaked entry to inner earth, spent a couple days in there.
Yeah.
The bear people, then returned her nicely up to the top after it was not cold anymore.
All right. And a lot of the missing 411 cases, the similar things are that they go missing in boulder fields. And boulder fields are kind of known, I believe, in Native American legends and stuff as for the inner earth dwellers.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
In and out.
Yep. There's been some videos I've seen on TikTok of some, mountainous caverns with secret doors and things. Those have been popping up lately.
Yeah. Do you see the inner creature coming out?
And it's never like a one-on-one interview like me and you are doing there, like across the table with the guy, but it's always like 200 yards away. There's a thing, shape thing, or a
shape like big-breasted Wendy.
No, not big-breasted Wendy. I would probably would have paid more, given more credence or attention to that sort of silhouette, but this was, more of like a ghillie suit looking, but a 9 foot tall ghillie suit looking thing, shape.
I think if you're going to invest all your time into putting on your ghillie suit and getting your buddy to video record you coming out of a cave, you definitely want to put on stilts.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, the giants are 9-10 feet tall.
Yeah.
But those videos, they're never close up and they're never like, the giant came and lifted up the back of the car.
Have you heard the giant that got killed by the Green Beret team in Afghanistan?
Yeah, he kicked their ass. Yeah, I heard that's a good story.
That is a good story.
It is. We're probably going to hear more of those stories. There was a couple that showed up in the mall, right?
Okay, in the Miami Mall.
Yeah, like 10 feet tall.
Yep. Miami's crazy. Well, I think we just completely shit all over this guy's very emotional story.
That's
about
not where we went. We just started somewhere and we philandered off a path. But yes, that maybe we needed a helping hand. And the universe provided it.
Yep. So on that theme, trying to get more back on track with this guy's story, there is a thing called the third man effect that is pretty well documented. it sounds basically like a guardian angel, but has been reported. It's called the third man effect. And this is, according to Wikipedia, the third man effect refers to the reported situations where an unseen presence, such as a spirit, provides comfort or support during traumatic experiences. And this was first started or documented by Ernest Shackleton, the explorer, who went to North and South Pole, I think, quite a bit at the turn of the century. And he described in one of his times being stuck on the South Pole, where lots of his team was dying and they were just trekking through never-ending blizzard for days on end. He describes that an incorporeal companion joined him and his men during the final leg of his 1914-1917 Antarctic expedition, which had become stranded in pack ice for more than 2 years. And this third entity, showed up. Shackleton wrote, during that long and racking march of 36 hours over the unnamed mountains and glaciers of South Georgia, it seemed to me often that there were 4 of us, not 3. And that's basically where his attributing this entity to keeping them alive. And I think even maybe guiding them.
And so they all interacted with it?
I don't know. That is not told in this brief summary. But yeah, that would be interesting to know if the other men knew, or if they were just the whole time, Jesus Christ.
Like he's just
gone bonkers. Or are we really supposed to
just talking to himself like he's 5 feet behind trying to keep up and just bumbling and arguing with himself.
But there are apparently other, it seems to be happen a lot to people in very cold climate and climates.
Maybe it's a defense mechanism, like, you're stuck in the ocean by yourself on, a life preserver, and then you split your consciousness and keep yourself company.
Yeah.
Could
be. I was once so drunk in a taxi cab that I think I was drinking with Dennis.
Yeah.
And Dennis got out of the cab once he got home. And I'm pretty sure I kept talking to Dennis all the way back to my place.
Maybe you guys had a telepathic, connection going because you were so relaxed.
Yeah. The only thing that snapped me into realizing I was imagining Dennis there was the look on the cabbie's face when I started to get out. And I was oh, shit.
They're like, where did you go?
I am just wasted.
Yeah, that's it. Sure. It seems rational. There's so much stuff that seems more rational this year than it did just 2 years ago.
Yeah, it sounds like the third man effect is basically a guardian angel.
Yeah.
Which again, going back to if ghosts exist, if any of this stuff exists, then that would make sense.
Yeah, it all makes sense.
Something that would. Have you ever had an occurrence where you felt like something definitely was not your own brain that told you to not do something?
Yeah.
Turned out to be correct?
Yes.
Yeah. I've had that before.
All right. This is sort of topical, but, So I was drunk in a club at midnight in New Orleans, and I had a bunch of those, what do they call them? Yes, the hurricanes. Somebody had bet me that I couldn't drink like four or five of them. And so I was on my fifth one, and then I stepped outside and then stepped back inside the club, and it's a 2-drink minimum. So they're like, hey, you need to order 2 drinks or you got to get out of here. I'm like, you don't understand. I've had 5 of these. Are like, get your drinks or get out. I'm like, fine. So 2 hurricanes. So now I'm on 6 and 7, and somehow this super hot chick grabs my hand and drags me over into a corner and shoves her hand down my pants. And I'm like, I'm trying to process this. And I'm like, what is happening? Like, this doesn't happen. And then this is where this is pertinent. A voice, not mine, says, that's a man. And I'm like, I pulled her hand out and ran out of the club and sat on the sidewalk waiting for our friends to come. So
And so it was your guardian angel
yeah,
alerted you
yes,
to.
yeah,
That's a good guardian angel.
right?
Yeah.
It's a wingman right
Yeah.
there.
Yeah, that guardian angel would probably let you die out in the snow,
Yeah,
but he knows what's important.
yeah. So you know, I mean, this in my state, this girl was insanely, ridiculously hot, and I could not contemplate why this was happening. And then the voice
That's
kicked in.
interesting that it kicked in while you were drunk.
Yeah, like, but
Yeah.
clearly, like it was like a billboard.
Yeah.
Like, like
I've had that, and I can't remember. I know I've had that. Like something, I want to say it was like, not turning down a road.
oh, I've got another one for you.
Yeah. Like,
Not a drinking one, not a
Yeah.
drinking one. But I was driving home from work, and I worked late at night. It was like 2 a.m, and I was driving home, and it was when I had that the big 4x4, the red one. And I was driving, and I was like, I was pushing it. It didn't really go that fast. It was like 65 or 70 was the top out. And then I kind of had a voice. I was trying to go fast, and the voice said, maybe don't go that fast, So I'm like, so I slowed down 5 miles an hour, I'm like, yeah, that's true. I don't really have to get there. That doesn't make a difference. Well, like 2 minutes later, I look up through the windshield, and I see this big dark shape moving across my hood, maybe about 15 feet in front of me. And it's just moving through the sky. And I'm like, what is that? And then it lands in the center lane of the highway. It was like a Yukon that it was getting on the entrance ramp, and there's the cement barricades that, do the turn and then you have the on-ramp.
Yeah.
Well, they must have gone full force right into the cement barricades, and they sent it up through the sky. It was like the Dukes of Hazzard, and it like flew and then landed on all four tires. All the four tires blew out. The bumpers blew off. There's sparks everywhere.
Yeah.
And I drove over their bumper. I'm like, what in the... They sort of swerved and then smashed into the guardrail on the side of the road.
Yeah.
And I passed by them, and then, I'm just like, it was like being in a movie, watching this happen. And I called 911 for somebody to come and check on them. But then I realized that if I had been going just a little bit faster, that Yukon would have landed right on top of my car.
Yeah.
And
Wow.
yes, or my truck.
Yeah.
So yeah, that was another where I specifically got a thought. It was like, hey, and it didn't seem like it was me, or thinking back.
You got a good guardian.
Yeah, you had to keep up with me. Like,
Don't you wish he could tell you more stuff though?
I know.
Like, yeah.
Yeah.
Like stuff, but he's probably just thinking, Freddie, just dial 411.
Yeah. Yeah. I gave you a whole phone number to call and ask questions. You haven't used it.
All right, let's get to the last call of this episode. And this is not paranormal.
Okay.
Right?
All right.
Just to prepare you.
Okay.
And so this shows the
How many times did you bleep out things?
Nothing should cause painful ear injuries with this one.
Okay.
And this is a good call to end on.
This is Rodell from Hardell. And I've got a story that will surely massage your earballs and blow your mind. Figuratively, back in 2015, Rodell was what was called a professional dater of the natives. And let me tell you that being a professional dater of the ladies is not a profession for the faint of heart. But Rodell from Hardell was the best the world has ever seen. And back in 2015, I was dating 3 lovely ladies at the same time, professionally. I was spinning plates. I was doing dance steps. I was making sure that the shimmy shammy story with one did not intersect with the shimmy shammy story of another, and doing it well, at least I thought, until upon a single evening when Rydell went to the first lovely lady's apartment to do the downstairs shimmy shammy yet again. But forthwith, to Rydell's surprise and shock and disbelief, all 3 of those lovely, lovely ladies lived within the same apartment. Their eyes became filled with wrath amongst a biblical level of fury. But Rydell did not lose his cool. He looked those 3 lovely, lovely, very angry ladies in the eyes, and Rydell from Hydell declared, "Ladies, there is more than enough Rydell to go around. And here I must say, Rydell is no fabricator. He is a professional dater, so you may believe this as the gospel." Moments later, Rydell was in a 4-way breakdance of flesh and lust. Hips are popping, uglies bumping, cheeks are flapping, and the moaning happening. And let me tell you, not a single lady left that day dissatisfied. And Rydell from Hydell kept that same level of intense love, fabricating and gesticulating for nearly 2 months. And then, after that couple of months, it all kind of fell apart. One of the ladies got an STD sort of thing. The other one started talking about marriage nonsense. And I even think the one of them was a lesbian, could never kiss me on the lips. But regardless, that is my story. And you may send Rydell from Hydell his $250 post-haste. Mucho gracias.
Oh, so, there, I think that's a great call to sum everything up.
I was wondering why you didn't announce the caller before.
Oh,
and then
I got too excited.
It became immediately obvious he was going to announce himself.
Yeah.
And so,
Yeah, that was Rydell from Hydell.
where is Hydell?
I looked it up. The only Hydell I could find was in Louisiana.
Oh, okay. All right.
So Louisiana, Hydell, Louisiana sounds like a happening spot.
Yeah, I mean, wait, so at first I thought he said he was a dater of the natives. And I'm like, what are the natives? Who are the natives? And then he said dating them professionally. Now, so then he cleared up that it was the ladies, dater of the ladies.
Yeah.
But still didn't clear up the professional dating part.
Yeah.
Hey, gigolo?
I am not sure. Sort of. It sounds like he's either a gigolo or he just takes it very seriously as dating.
Yeah, that was he's got a rhythm to him. I'll give him that. That's awesome. I mean, to have that go in a 4-way for 2 months.
2 months.
It's pretty good.
Yeah.
And even so, he never, because I did at some point back in my dating days, I had a couple times where I would date more than one girl, but I figured it was easier. I just tell him, I'm like, hey, I'm not doing the one-on-one thing. I'm dating around because I don't know what I want, and here's where I'm at. So I've got, 2 girls that I'm talking to right now, but they already know about each other and about this date I'm on now.
Yeah.
So, but it doesn't sound like Rydell was on that path.
Rydell seemed like he was definitely trying to keep it secret. But I don't know if he was a gigolo. Maybe that's like in the contract or something. I don't know. Or maybe, but I mean,
So did it turn from a business relationship to a personal?
there's a lot of questions.
One build?
Yeah, if Rydell wins.
I like it. Yeah. I like to break down
Yeah.
how this, are they all on the same floor? Was he
It sounded like they were all roommates.
Oh, what?
Yeah.
I thought they were just in the same building.
No, I think the way I got it is when he walked in the apartment, he realized they were all roommates.
Sounds like a setup right now.
Yeah.
That doesn't happen by chance. No.
He knew.
Yeah.
They
They targeted him.
targeted Rydell.
Yeah. Then now this spins a totally different direction. Because 2, maybe. 2.
Yeah.
But yeah, there's zero chance that 3 roommates could be dating
The
the same guy.
Yeah.
Especially as one that is as unique in his verbiage and the way he comes across. Because when you disappear to go out on a date, you with your roommates, how'd it go?
Yeah.
I can only
Unless he
imagine.
was giving them each a different name. But yeah, if he was just announcing,
He seems to like his name.
from Rydell, yeah. He talked in the third person. So most people that talk about themselves in the third person don't. Yeah, they're trying to get their name out there.
Yeah, so once the second one would have went on the date, I think that they would have found some similarities in their discussions, over their microwave food when they got back to their roommate.
And they were okay, we're gonna set Rydell up.
Yeah, I think maybe the first 2. So let's just imagine this happened on Tinder, and the first one matched, and then the second one matched, and isn't this the guy?
Yeah.
I was like, he's cool and fun. And then she gets back and and now the third roommate is like, no, you got to get on in this. Get on this. So
Yeah. Something doesn't add up about Rydell's.
but
I don't want to piss him off.
well, I just
I don't want to piss him off.
professionally, I just need more clarification on what he's professionally providing.
Yeah. I don't know. That either must mean he's a gigolo or he just he took pride in his dating, that he took it to a professional standard.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. I'm trying to quantify that.
And I really feel like just for continuity with the rest of the show, I should mention that maybe, this is my own hunch, one of the women was big-breasted Wendy.
Yeah, well, for Rydell's sake, I would hope one of them would be.
All right. Well, that is probably, we're about in an hour and a half, so that's probably a good spot to wrap this episode up, FCAT. If you have a story to call in, please do check the show notes. Go to yourbesttruestory.com. There's 3 different ways you can call in on the 1-800 number. You can record yourself on an MP3 file and email it to us, or you can use the easiest version is the SpeakPipe button, which is in the show notes and on the website, that allows you to immediately record the story for us on your phone. And Freddie, you got anything to wrap things up with?
I think you guys should call Jim from your phone when you're out at the bar and tell him one of the stories live.
Yeah.
It's happening to you
that would,
as it happened.
That would be amazing. All right. Thank you very much, everyone. Go to yourbesttruestory.com and check back in for the next episode in a week or 2. Thanks a lot.
Please keep in mind that Your Best True Story podcast cannot attest to the veracity of any story contained within. Therefore, we strongly recommend you seek second opinions before leaving your job to hunt Bigfoot, leaving your spouse because they may be a secret lizard alien, ingesting large amounts of hallucinogenics to travel to other dimensions, robbing banks, summoning demons, or participating in large numbers of orgies. The Your Best True Story podcast takes no responsibility if you are bitten by a werewolf, audited by the IRS, or develop eczema.
You got a crazy ass true story to tell. It could be funny or thrilling or creepy as hell. And when you speak, surely none will make a sound. And the world's going breathless when your true story comes around. Oh, hear the crazy bullshit flying. Just one more maybe true story before we're dying. Yet be warned, surely not all stories will be treated the same. So don't blame us if your tale about Grandma's cookies is lame. The only way to ensure you could possibly win a buck is to make sure that story of yours don't suck. So instead of yawns, go ahead and tell us how that Bigfoot or werewolf drowned, and then hear the world go breathless when your true story comes around. You'll hear the crazy bullshit flying. Just one more maybe true story before we're dying. Yet be warned, surely not all stories will be treated the same. So don't blame us if your tale about your grandma's cookies is lame.